the Deputy Prime Minister of Fiji, Minister of Foreign Affairs for Tuvalu, the New Zealand Minister for Foreign Affairs, Local Government and Associate Maori Development, the Executive Secretary of SCAT, representatives of international and regional organizations, Moderator, the Deputy Secretary of Fiji's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Kia orana, bula vinaka, and warm greetings from historic and chilly Glasgow. We in the Pacific have shared a rich and diverse history of migration and movement. Our ancestors were voyagers, seafarers who used the stars, the winds, and the currents of the ocean to chart their course, sailing from island to island, settling in some, and relocating to others when needed. But this was most often a choice. However, in our current context, due to the increasing climate and disaster risks faced by our region, we are being forced to relocate or migrate rather than choosing where and when or if to move. Due to the impacts of climate change on our ocean, the mother that nurtured us and cared for us is becoming a threat to the survival of our people, with the very real possibility that we will need to abandon our way of life as we know now. This is totally unacceptable because it is not of our making, it is not the fault of our people. Yet this sad situation is already becoming a reality for some of our communities. The Carteret Islands in Papua New Guinea became the first island community in the world to undergo an organized relocation in response to climate change-related rising sea levels. On Saturday night at the Pacific Islands Forum high-level event here in Glasgow, Ms. Gladys Habu moved us with her story of how her grandmother's island home, Kale Island in the Solomon Islands, was submerged forever and had to be abandoned. The Honourable Minister from Fiji can further attest to several communities in Fiji having to relocate further inland due to rising sea levels. The situation is even more dire for those of our people who live on atoll nations. For Tuvalu, Kiribati and Marshall Islands, there is no option to move further inland, as the Honourable Minister from Tuvalu is keenly aware. This is indeed a matter of survival. It is also a matter of our sovereignty, our livelihoods, our identity, and as rising tides force our displacement, our dignity and rights as large ocean states will be under threat. However, while the science predicts a dire scenario for the whole of mankind, our people remain adamant that abandoning one's own community, island or country is not an option. It is in this context that our leaders have put in place frameworks and instruments to assist our region and our people to be better prepared to mitigate and adapt to the impacts of climate change. The Framework for Resilient Development in the Pacific advocates for risk-informed development, embracing the learning and practices that will help us to withstand the shocks and stresses of climate change and disasters. Within this regional mechanism, the Technical Working Group on Human Mobility was established, with the International Organization for Migration as chair, and provides a space for coordination of activities and exchange of practices, working closely with the Pacific Climate Change, Migration and Human Security and other partners. The Bowie Declaration on Regional Security, endorsed by our leaders in 2018, elevates climate change as a threat to human security, inclusive of climate change and disaster-induced mobility. The 2019 Kailaki Rua Declaration further stretches urgent climate change action now through addressing the underlying causes of climate change that will go a long way towards preventing climate change mobility, as opposed to reactionary measures that are not always conducive to the peace and security of our people. The landmark Declaration on Preserving Maritime Zones in the face of climate change-related sea level rise, endorsed by our leaders in August this year, and based on the spirit of the Convention of the Law of the Sea, seeks to preserve our Blue Pacific home now and into perpetuity. The 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific is our collective vision and commitment as a region to ensure the well-being and prosperity of our people, with climate change recognized as a key driver of change that requires innovative approaches, including addressing climate change mobility. Forum leaders have also endorsed the establishment of the Pacific Resilience Facility for upfront investment on our resilience and preparedness. It is in this context that the work to develop a regional framework on human mobility under the leadership of Tuvalu and Fiji is continuing. A joint working group under the Pacific Climate Change, Migration and Human Security Project is ensuring all our island communities can come through the uncertainties arising from climate change. As a Blue Pacific community, we are not standing by and letting our future be dictated or determined by the unreasonable actions of others. And I reiterate again, abandoning one's own community, island or country should not be seen by the global community as a reasonable or adequate response to the climate crisis we are currently in. We can and we must do better. I thank you.